Greetings, Laoshi Lawrence McElroy here for Water Tiger School of Tai Chi Chuan. And here we are again. You know, this is the normal within our rotation. We've been switching back and forth between Qigong and Tai Chi, and this is a Tai Chi focus, supposedly. But it's going to be more than that. This is kind of a mixed bag. We'll probably also put it on the stretching and physical training playlist because that's where we're going to start. This is evolution. And this is the third time we've worn this t-shirt. The first time all the way back in the beginning in May of 2020. It was for a Facebook Live session on Tai Chi Flying. And then again, Tai Chi and Qigong training from that playlist. It was staff play basics because he's carrying a staff. But anyway, we thought it appropriate with the line of evolution to talk about evolution in the things that we do. Water Tigers recently run across a Chinese idiom that kind of applies here. There are skies beyond our skies. And that's, things change, things get better. And we like to think of all of our evolutionary changes in the things that we do, stretching, physical training, Qigong, and Tai Chi, are all for the better. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with a very light, sort of casual aerobic warm-up. You can do what you want to do, but we're going to start with the stretches. I'm going to do my best to sort of link them back to where things originally appeared on the channel, and we'll see how that goes. I have mint. I have my, I guess, yin and yang tea here, because I have hot tea. And I also have a little cold tea. So, I'm not going to do a time thing. Sometimes I fire up the timepiece and I do a time thing. I'm just going to sort of count. So we're going to start with marching. You can stay with marching when I do other things, but I'll also give you some other options. We just want to get some blood and oxygen floating through the body to get to the muscles before we do any of the stretches. So without further ado, I don't really have any announcements. Things are as they are, have been. So we're going to start with marching. We're going to bring the knees up. Remember, whenever we do this, we always talk about don't take the targets to the knees, bring the knees to the targets. We were doing this on the mat last night in the studio, and I said, you know, sometimes it actually helps for those who want to dribble their knees to go up higher on their thighs as they march. And we're just going to count down from 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to go wide. You may not be able to go wide. You may not have the openness of the hips and the flexibility in the quad and the groin area. So you can keep going forward. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to do a little light run. You can just march with more vigor if you want to, so you take the impact out and the quickness out. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go straight to jacks. You might just do huggers with a little vigor and a little kick. 10, 9, 8, or this, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to shake up. So I got the breath going a little bit. I'm going to do some huggers myself with just a little side-to-side shuffle. There'll be a couple floor stretches here. So if you're not comfortable getting down on the floor, skip that part. I didn't grab the yoga blocks, so I'll probably have to get off camera to grab the blocks at some point for at least one of the things. So we're going to start. We've done them a couple of times. the Egoscue shoulder series. It's a series of movements from a guy named, I think it's Peter Egoscue, to help build synovial fluid in the shoulders. And there's 3 of them. There's hitchhikers, forward and back. And it's the third one we're going to address today because of a certain evolution. But we did it in the stretches and physical training. Yes, rented lips. Stretches and physical training playlist that was favorite upper body stretches. And then we also made it a part of our warm-up in Water Tiger for Sachem New, that playlist. And it was when we did in our Tai Chi lottery series round. And anyway, the thing with butterfly is one where we open and close the arms. And we have the Egoscue hand position for the shoulder series, which is you're closing the pads of the fingers to the base of the fingers, and the thumbs are forward. I'm not going to bother with hitchhikers, those haven't changed. But butterfly, you turn the thumbs down, and you bring the knuckles to the temples. Now, one of the things we specified in the 2 times that it's appeared, that people have a tendency to really pump their head. It's difficult not to move your head at all, just because of the nature of pushing the elbows forward, the shoulders round this way, the neck and the back are going to naturally move back. You just don't want to add to it, right? So some people might say that, well, he tells us not to move his head, and then I'm watching him on the video and he's moving his head. There's some movement we really can't eliminate. The change is that a lot of people do this, and what they do, the instruction is knuckles at the temples, and they tilt their palms slightly down, so the index finger knuckle is closer to the back of the head than the pinky knuckle. And what that does is it brings the contact point down lower and also easier to manage. The evolution that we've noticed as we watched people who pay a little bit more attention to this stuff sometimes than we do, that if you make sure the palms stay forward so the knuckles stay up, it's much harder to bring the elbows together toward one another. You still want to get them as close together or touching, but you'll really notice if you keep those knuckles up and increased effectiveness of the stretch that you're getting through the biceps, the triceps, the shoulders, and the upper back, and the chest. So that's one. Butterfly, but with more of a door hinge position than anything else. And also, you want to eliminate this or this. You want to keep the knuckles touching. But that vertical alignment in the palm of the hand was something that we noticed that we didn't point out before, and that we've never really emphasized in our instruction of it. So next, it was also presented in stretches and physical training, and on that playlist and on the favorite upper body stretches, and may have appeared elsewhere. We're not sure. We did the best we could to find where we did these things. We didn't always list everything that we did in every video. And it's a goalpost series of stretches, which does sort of the same thing. You're in this position. The upper arms are parallel to the floor, or parallel-ish to the floor, and you're making these goalposts. And the first stretch we presented is this, sort of doing the same thing, bringing the elbows and the forearms as close together as possible and then opening up. And then the second stretch is switching between down and up. There is now something that has been added in the middle. When we were first introduced to this stretch, we only had the 2 things, the bringing them together and the up and down. But eventually, from the same source, they added it in between, where you go from this position to this position. And then what you do is little rockers. And doing this in between actually makes the second exercise all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, a little bit easier. because it sort of primes those muscles and the joints for the movement to come. You just want to do it for a little while. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's in addition to the goalpost stretches. So next, another upper body stretch. This one's from yoga with a little intensifier. And we did the standing side stretch and stretching and physical training video. So it's in that playlist. That was yoga, qigong, and tai chi variations on side stretch or side stretch variations. We had the dates, but it's just a lot of data to talk about. So just look for that video. You know, again, yoga, qigong, tai chi, side stretch variations. But it's yoga side stretch. As we presented in that video, you know, you can do the feet together. It's sort of a more traditional stretch. You can put them partially apart, maybe hip width, maybe shoulder width. The wider you get, sort of it changes the dynamics of the stretch. But I'm going to do more or less the traditional yoga stretch. Maybe even the sort of a more yoga-ish entry into it with the yoga, different than our spine hanging like a string of pearls. I'm going to lengthen the legs. I'm not just pushing the knees back, I'm actually lengthening them. I'm going to lengthen the crown point of the head toward the heavens. Feel that opening up the spine. I'm going to start in prayer hands. I'm going to find an exhale. I'm going to inhale, and you can do the hands right straight up if you want. I like the opening, reaching up and out of the shoulders. You can do the starfish hands. I like the, you know, I usually do the palms together. I'm going to drop the left hand on the left hip and reach the right hand across. And this was the end of the presentation in the video. After you've been in the initial stretch for a while, if you want to turn up the intensity, you reach the second arm up. So sort of in the same position you were just getting into the stretch initially. I'm going to drop that arm first, come up, and bring the other arm up, and go over to the other side. I just want to balance the two sides. Breathe in. I have a tendency to twist into this. It's a bad tendency. I've become more aware of it over time. Evolution. I'm going to inhale and bring the other arm up. And I'm not bringing the hands together. That's a different stretch. I really am in this position, but angled. And I'm going to just drop both arms. And that is the side stretch variation. So in, what was it, Facebook Live sessions, Water Tiger for Sachem, August 31st, I just said I wasn't going to do dates, August 31st, 2020, so it was in the first year. We presented a traditional runner's stretch. So we couldn't find where we did the more yoga-ish version of a runner's stretch, if you will. A traditional runner's stretch is usually this. You're in a runner's lunge, so knee over ankle, fingertips, pads, closed fists, palms on the ground. Yoga blocks, whatever you want. And you go through this process where you rock back and forth. We also, one of our usual stretches in the studio is a runner's stretch with both hands on the inside of the foot. So it looks a little bit different. It's here. And we think we've done this in one of the videos. We just couldn't find any place where it appeared. Anyway, this, or down to the knees, has always been the end of that stretch. But we're doing something different now. We offer it as an option where after you get into the position, then what you do is roll the ankle. So the inside of the instep is off the ground. The knee opens up. And some people would refer to this as pigeon prep or pigeon stretch in yoga. So it's opening up the hip flexor, that sort of thing. And some people, even if they're going down to their elbows, will start in this position and then go down. I don't like that. It's a little tricky on the ankle. So if I'm in a good enough position, my muscles are warm enough, I go down first, and then I open up the hip. Again, the instep is off. I'm going to take that leg back, shake it out a little bit, come over to this side. And again, you can stay up here or not, but this is the addition, the evolution, the going to another sky above our current sky. I'm going to flatten that and go down to my elbows. And my right elbow's not going down on this side. And then open that up. Boom. Set that back and stand up. So again, we think we've done that runner stretch without the hip opener. We just couldn't find it. So another ground stretch, it's the last one. It's a variation on the cat-cow. I think when we did stretching and physical training, that playlist, floor stretch favorites, which we thought the runner stretch was in, but we went through the video and we may have skipped over it, but we didn't see it. Probably called it cat, or what did we call it? Camel cow, maybe. It's been called a lot of different things in our exposure to it. But the basic cat-cow stretch is you're sort of driving your shoulders back, bringing your head up, and pushing your tailbone up. So it's sort of like I'm attempting to bring my glutes to my shoulders. And that's cow. And cat is bringing the front of my shoulders to my hips. So you're really arcing the back. So that's the traditional exhale, inhale, exhale. And there are other versions, intensifiers out there with how to do this, including, putting your knees further back, putting your hands further forward, that sort of thing. We don't do that. But the variation that recently entered our lives is after doing cat-cow for a while, then bringing your spine to a neutral position, halfway in between, sort of just like you're in plank, but on your hands and knees. And by the way, the hands are underneath your shoulders. The knees are underneath your hips. And now what I'm going to do is bring the tops of my feet up off the ground so I can put them out. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my left hip to the left, and I'm going to turn my upper torso back and my lower torso forward and look at my feet. And I'm going to come to the center, inhale, and exhale. And do my best to see at least my pinky toe back there. And I'm going to go back and forth. Be careful of your knees, depending upon the surface of your floor. You probably may need padding if you're on something that isn't already padded. yoga mat or two, folded towels, something to protect your knees. And that's a little variation of cat-cow. There you go. We got one more. It's an upper body stretch. It's a variation on one of our favorites. There's a series of stretches called the cross wrist stretches. And in sort of a funny way, half of the traditional cross wrist, you're not really crossing your wrists. Right? The traditional cross wrist, which was in a stretching and physical training playlist video in October of 2020, favorite upper body stretches. So it goes back to where we started earlier. Kind of messed up the order on the cue cards. Right? And the front is this, crossing the palms in front of one another, toward one another in front of you, and seeking to bring the front of the shoulders together. And then the second half of that, usually interlock the fingers, but it's palm to palm-ish. And there are all sorts of different things you can do. And this isn't, this has nothing to do with the variation. The variation is to the front, where you're then driving the knuckles to the floor, really exaggerating your posture. You're seeking to bring the backs of the shoulders together. The intensifier here is pulling away. But you can, you don't have to bring the palms together. I can do that. Instead of that, I can get to the ends of the fingers, so there's a lot of distance. I can get a towel or something in between. By the way, another, if you will, way to evolve in your own development is learning to get comfortable with how you cross the wrists in front, and how you interlock the fingers behind, or in this case, in front. Because the intensifier is to bring the palms together and interlock the fists, straightening the arms. Now, normally for me, my default position is crossing, so the right pinky is the one that's outside, and the left thumb is on the top. When you switch that, for the first time ever, it's going to go, okay, I think one of those hands are mine, but I don't know what the other one is. Right? And eventually, it starts to become like, I'm not even sure what my default setting is. We can go either way, and it doesn't really make a difference. But anyway, the variation on the cross wrist stretch, feet about shoulder wide, maybe hip distance. I'm going to start with that. And in this position, I'm going to start with a pelvic tuck. So it's not our basic vertical alignment. I'm going to tuck the pelvis forward, slide, roll the hips forward. I'm going to arc the back so I have like this really bad posture. I'm going to drive the knuckles out away from me and do my best to get my biceps into my head. If you're not really rounding here, you're not really getting the stretch that we want. Well, that's pretty intense. That's a good one. And that's it for the stretches. So if you're not interested in talking about things Qigong and Tai Chi, you're done. And as a transition, little story. On our Facebook page a few months ago, back in August of this year, 2023, we started a series where we'd go to our library in the office, pull a book off the shelf in the morning, just randomly, open the book, and where our eyes fell, that's what we'd sell. That's what we'd share on our Facebook page. And one morning a while back, The book that we grabbed was Tai Chi for Dummies by Teresa Iknoyen. Sorry if I got the last name wrong. I got the first name wrong by accident. Iknoyen is, we believe is how you pronounce her last name, but it's Tai Chi for Dummies. And the page we opened to and where our eyes fell was a paragraph that was about how in our Tai Chi and Qigong, if the Qigong has an opening movement, but especially in the Tai Chi form, we pay a lot of attention to preparation, to that moment before opening. Now, some people's openings are more formal than Water Tiger schools, but generally you start in a position that might be similar to this, or somebody's Ma Bo-ish position, whatever, and you hang out there for a while as everything settles. It's one of the moments that you may refer to seeking to be in a Wu Chi state, a no extremities state, nothing on the outside, nothing on the inside. The way Water Tiger looks at that is nothing on the outside, no physical tension, nothing on the inside. The mind is calm and clear. You're not just ricochet rabbit mind or monkey mind or anything like that. We do that. We hang out in preparation for a while. But Ms. Iknoyen pointed out when people close, they tend to just close and then they're out, it's time to get out of Dodge. Like you finish your last movement, and, embrace the tiger, return to mountain, very abbreviated there, sorry folks. Settle. All right, everybody, how'd that go? She suggested it is a good idea to hang out after you finish. That closing at the end of I would say at the end of a Qigong form, but her book was, specifically Tai Chi for Dummies. Just take a moment. A shorthand of what she wrote would be, do a quick 3-4 breath body scan. That includes sort of, where you are at mentally and how things feel physically. And then step out of it. Honestly, to start with, I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Then I realized, give it a shot. So I made a point of incorporating it in my own play and not making people do it unless I'm leading them in something, but it is a suggestion that you give yourself that extra moment. So, we really only have a couple of things in Qigong. And there are things that we sort of, when we presented the two movements as warm-ups, there are things that we mentioned in our presentation, but the change hadn't been made yet. In other words, we discussed the possibility. The first is from Tai Chi Qigong. It's from the stationary family, stationary Tai Chi Qigong, and from the primary set, and from our breathing set. And the posture is called Expand the Chest to Cleanse the Body. And that's the feet are shoulder wide, knees are open, sort of our standard position that we refer to as Ma Bo. Perineum underneath the crown point of the head, chin is slightly tucked. And the movement is crossing the arms in front. Inhalation, exhale. And as we presented it, inhale and exhale, we talked about how some people have, ask or may cross their arms or switch their cross as they go through. We have always tended to just whatever, sort of like with this, whatever your default setting was in your crossing of your arms, just do that. It doesn't have to switch. It's another thing where we're not making people change. If they want the default setting, they can keep the default setting. But it does indeed, I wouldn't say that it makes the posture feel more complete, but it simply changes the feeling of the posture And generally speaking, that means that something good has happened. That's a good evolution. That's a nice sunny sky beyond our current sky. So in other words, you do it in the standard breathing set that we do at the end of a lot of our classes. It's 3 repetitions of everything. So it's the first movement out of stand still to regulate the breath. So the arms drop down, elongate, there's a bounce. And for me, my default setting is normally with the right arm closer in. So inhalation and up, exhalation and down. And then the second time, my right hand's going to cross in front. Inhalation up, exhalation down. Then the third time, I'm going to have inhalation. I'm crossing to the inside, exhalation. And in the transition, I'm going to cross with the right hand outward to balance, and then I go to the next posture. Since there's another posture following it. If there wasn't another posture following it, I wouldn't do that cross. I would come down and close. That would leave with an odd number of crosses, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you feel it is, then you could do that cross and then close. But again, just a suggestion, if you happen to do expand the chest to cleanse the body, maybe explore that feeling. Maybe it's something that you'll want to allow to evolve in your own practice. Maybe it won't be. You can go either way with these things. The last is, oh, by the way, we did expand the chest to cleanse the body in a Tai Chi and Qigong training playlist video. It was a foundational exercise, threading the 9-hole pearl. That was our warm-up. The next is just a little tweak to, again, from one of our postures from our breathing set that we've used as a warm-up here. It was in another Tai Chi and Qigong training video. It was the warm-up for It's the Little Things, where we were talking about little details. And left, right to push the mountains would be up and reaching out, as if you're standing in between 2 great mountains. If you're more open in the chest and the upper back, your mountains can be right beside you. If you have more tension, then you might want to angle them slightly up. But the more traditional name is right, left to touch the mountains. And we argued for a long time, as we were doing this, that our alteration of the name to push made sense because we know push is penetrating energy, and we want to feel as we reach out to the mountains, we're going beyond their surface. Push is considered a striking energy, and we're not breaking them apart. And we'd always have to do that caveat. So there's one mark against the decision. I don't think it was the final straw, but it was pretty close to the final straw. It was sort of actually happened after I thought the change needed to be made and we needed to go back to touch, because we know, right, as players of Tai Chi, that a simple touch can have sticky energy. And you don't have to grab anything if you have good sticky energy. So a touch in itself can be penetrating. Anywho, someone was talking about the postures. They were using posture names as a reference to a bigger question. And they said left, right to move mountains. And it's like, no. That's one of the reasons, that we decided the push was not a good idea, because people get the wrong idea from push, but left, right to touch mountains. So evolution can include a simple adjustment in how you're naming things, because language is important. Words are important. And the words you use have an impact on the intent of what it is that you're doing. So just another way to evolve. There have been, over the last nearly 4 years now, a number of times we have addressed other evolutions that we won't address here. I'm going to give them a little side knowledge, acknowledgement. But things like targeting and brush knee. That most brush knee folks will write straight out, and we used to be that as well. But now we're angled down and across. And we talked about, the reason for that. basic martial application where your opponent is, if you've really moved them to a certain area, that's not going to be where they are. And it's sort of the same thing with Repulse the Monkey. Boom. That we would do that. And it plays nicely into instructing on Repulse the Monkey. So I used to love to do this, that it's like you're repulsing the monkey, you do this, stop Mr. Monkey, and he grabs a hold of your wrist and you break the grip. And you go, no, stop it, monkey. But again, if I'm pulling somebody down here, they're not going to be up here for the strike. So an argument could be made that it's two people, you've pulled one down here, you're hitting the next one in line. But we, again, sort of move that strike over there. So we've addressed those particular evolutions over our time with you on the YouTube channel. So we're not going to do it again there, beyond what I just did. And the last one for the day is a little bit interesting because it's in the parry and punch into separate fist, or in terms of the long form, seal tightly, which includes a separate the fist movement, but isn't so named, at least in our traditional long form. And it wasn't that long ago, within about the last year and a half, that I realized, as I was playing with folks, that I was doing something in that sequence that other folks weren't. And, you know, from parry and punch, going into parry and punch, I didn't lay the tape on the floor. You know, parry and punch is done in water, you know, in a four stance for us, in Water Tiger's four stance. Feet are shoulder wide, determined by where the heels are. Back foot somewhere around the 45-degree angle out, so it's angled out. Front foot staying on that line, so I'm not bringing it in any. And forward. When the hips are square, that's our forward position. Front toes forward or slightly in, but not out and away. Knee over ankle is safest, knee over the top of the foot is fine. So this is our punch, this is our parry. Right? We come from this position, chambering, turning forward, turning forward, turning forward. And that's the parry and punch portion. And now separate fists, what happens for a lot of people is they extend forward and they simply go and slide the hand, fingertips pointed up from one side to the other to do separate fist. And then in our 24, it goes into a sweeping push. In our long form, that then becomes, do that better, seal tightly, and a sweeping push. So anyway, people were doing that. They were finishing parry and punch, little extension, and that. So initially when I saw that folks were doing some variation on that, pretty much the same, I mean, some people might even be a little bit more external if they're relatively new to the movement or a little less mindful. What I noticed that I was doing was in the extension, see what's happening is the palm of my hand is staying on my arm. My fingertips go from up to forward, and then as I come back, the palm turns up as the fingertips turn up and come back. So again, a little bit closer. Parry and punch. Underneath. Coming up. Pulling back. Parry and punch. Again, I'm not out here because I want that little extra room. And that palm is underneath, fingertips mostly forward. Coming back, rounding around. See how the hand turns. Fingertips up, palm out. And the sweeping push. There's just more whole body movement. If you've paid any attention to us over the years, you also know that at Water Tiger, especially for young style Tai Chi players, we put a lot of emphasis. I just did that in Ma Bo. And I was like, why does that feel weird? Because, dude, you were in Ma Bo instead of your, oops, instead of your 4 stance. Anyway, we put a lot of emphasis on Chansi, on silk reeling, and also on whole body movement. If part of me is still, all of me is still. If part of me moves, all of me moves. So in other words, if I'm going to keep the wrist in one position, that's part of me not moving, so this would be the movement. So I want to keep the wrist alive as you move. The fist is still there, but softening, and then it finds the place to open. But that little wrap, I just feel so much better and so much more alive. Ta-da. By the way, what I've realized, it wasn't an evolution. It was Lao-She Lawrence McElroy realizing that he was never that detailed in that particular moment, which has happened from time to time. Time to time, it's been, you know, simple decisions, like going into different postures, like going into the kicks and not specifying which hand is supposed to be, you know, stacked. If you do the, you know, we did kick walking. I didn't look up the which video it is, but we always have the hand that matches the leg that's extended underneath, because then you have to have more, you know, there's more movement through the entire body to get out there. If the hand that matches the foot is on top, then all you have to do is put the hand out. So you want those, you put that obstacle there, if you will. But it wasn't specified originally for the longest time. So that was just something else that wasn't specified. It was just, you know, parry and punch, hand switches to the other side. That was probably the direction. It's gotten more specific now. But you can go back and look. Water Tiger for Sachem, new, is the playlist. It was March 8th of 2021, so it was very close to the end of that particular series, that playlist. It was in fan back, parry and punch, walking exercise. And then parry and punch also makes an appearance in the May 4th, 2021 Tai Chi and Qigong training, which was another combined posture walk, parry and punch, embrace the tiger walking exercise. And you'll see them both there in that position, doing that, you know, I was doing that in parry and punch. And I probably wasn't talking about it because that wasn't a thing. So there are skies beyond my skies. There are always ways to improve not only what I do within the plane of Tai Chi, but also within the teaching of Tai Chi. So evolution. I hope from beginning to end you found this interesting, you found it useful. I hope you also gleaned a little bit of the underlying lesson. There are skies beyond our skies. We can always get better. And, you know, and the humble side of that is just that, is that we haven't reached the apex of our abilities yet. Plus, there are skies beyond our skies. There are other people who have more sky than I do. So we remember that too. Back, hopefully in 3 weeks, we'll see, because, you know, we're moving into toward different end of the year holidays. Qigong, we'll put the cap on our animal frolic sequence with what is known as the basic animal walk. As I have mentioned, over time, whenever I mention there are 26 animal frolics, 25 of them are all tied to the specific animals. That most people use the basic animal walk as an introduction to sort of the basic theory of how we move and breathe and that sort of thing in our lineage's approach to the movement. But our lineage actually puts the basic animal walk last because of the way we approach it isn't basic at all. So we probably really shouldn't call it that. Perhaps at some point another evolution will be a name change for the basic animal walk. So as always, just keep in mind, we preview the comments on this page, on our YouTube channel, provided they're Constructive criticism, positive, of course they'll go through. Negative, not so much. If it's a flame, if it's constructive criticism and it could be considered negative, it still will go up. But not somebody flaming us, which I guess we broke our cherry on that recently. We had one. It was back in the day before we started previewing. Anyway, not going to get into it. We also post a link to this on our Facebook page, which is a little bit more open. However, if you flame us there, sort of the same thing. It's going to get removed. You're going to get banned from the page. But we welcome both positive and constructive negative criticism. Keep in mind, we're in flu season. We've got the new variant of COVID, RSV is also on a climb, especially in the U.S., especially on the West Coast. Not so much on the East yet, but it is starting to appear. So, take proper precaution. If nothing else, just keep washing your hands on a regular basis for the 20 seconds. And you will see us the next time. Thank you very much for your time and attention. As always, we appreciate it.